You're listening to Everybody Pulls the Tarp, the go-to podcast for high performers. I'm Andrew Moses. Each week, you'll hear my thought-provoking conversations with Olympians, pro athletes, CEOs, elite coaches, best-selling authors, and other high performers to uncover their secrets to success. Get ready to be inspired each week when we talk about leadership, teamwork, work ethic, and more. Are you ready? Let's go. Hi, everyone. This week, my guest is five-time Olympic medalist Elana Meyers Taylor. You may remember Elana's story from the Beijing Olympics just a few months ago. She tested positive for COVID-19 after arriving in Beijing and was forced to isolate herself in a hotel room during the days leading up to her Olympic events. Instead of getting discouraged about the situation, Elana got to work. She turned her small Beijing hotel room into a makeshift training center and was determined to be ready for her Olympic moment, no matter the circumstances. A now famous video of her doing a barbell workout in her hotel room even became a worldwide sensation on social media. Luckily, Elana was released from isolation in time to compete. She went on to win both a silver and bronze medal, bringing her total career medal count to 5. Elana is now the most decorated Black athlete in Winter Olympics history, and she is the oldest woman to medal for the U.S. at the Winter Olympics in any sport. After seeing Elana's story, I just knew I needed to talk to her. We sat down a few weeks ago to explore her history-making career. We discussed how to sustain success over a long period of time, ways to maintain perspective when things don't go your way, and so much more. Elana's story is a powerful reminder that where there's a will, there's a way. I hope this conversation brings you a little extra inspiration to help you get wherever it is you are trying to go. So, let's pull the tarp and get straight to five-time Olympic medalist Elana Meyers Taylor. Elana, I love your story. Where I want to begin, when I was tuning into the Olympics, I saw the news that when you arrive in Beijing, you test positive for COVID, you need to go into isolation, and you still come out of isolation and win 2 medals. I want to know, so how did it all happen? So you get to Beijing and they tell you that you test positive. Let's start there.
So first of all, even to get into Beijing, you have a couple of really intense tests. Like they're pretty strict and everything. They have China has some of the highest standards for COVID testing in the world. So any trace amount of COVID, they're going to detect it. So you have a couple of those tests going in. We passed those with flying colors. And when I say we, it was my husband, who's on the men's bobsled team, myself, and my son, who is at the time was 1.5. And he was allowed to travel with me because I was still breastfeeding. And then my father, who was traveling with us to take care of him. So we all were going to China on the way. Pass those tests to get into China. Also at the airport, there's a very strict test you have to take there. Pass that test to get in. And then it wasn't until 2 days later that we were on the ground already. Thought we were in the clear that we test positive. Have no idea how we contracted it. Before that, we were in a training camp in Switzerland. We actually decided not to go back to the US or not to travel as much as possible in order to try and avoid COVID. So we were in a training camp in Switzerland and we were in a house with 7 other people and nobody else in that house had gotten COVID. So we have no idea where we got it. Still to this day, not a clue, maybe in the airport or something like that. And of course, my son's not 2 years old. So maybe something got him or anything, but he's always around us. So it was really weird circumstance and really kind of threw us off. But immediately after that, the first thing is just making sure we were all healthy. And then the Chinese or the Beijing Olympic Committee started the process of moving us into isolation. We were in isolation. We were in a hotel regardless because I couldn't stay in the Olympic Village with my son. So they started the process of moving us to an isolation hotel where we would each be separated. So my husband would be in a different room than myself, and my father and my son would be in a room separate. Because how it worked is if you tested negative, you had to have 2 negative tests in order to get out. If you tested negative and the person you were in a room with didn't, you were stuck there until they tested negative as well. So in order to try and get back to competition as quickly as possible, we all separated out except my father and my son, obviously.
So the picture went viral of you, lifting those barbells in that small space in the hotel room. I want to kind of dig into all this a little bit more. So once you go into isolation, you're intent on obviously staying healthy, first and foremost, like you said, but getting back to competition at an elite level. So how did you go about kind of putting together the plan to stay in action from isolation?
So fortunately, my husband is my strength and conditioning coach as well as my chiropractor, all these different types of things. So he was in the exact same space I was. Had the exact same limitations. So he would basically come up with workouts, come up with a plan, try it out himself within our limitations, and then pass it on to me. So as you can imagine, it took us a couple of days to try and get into our rhythm and try to figure it out, which was okay because I probably could have used the rest anyways to make sure I wasn't having any ill effects or anything like that. The other thing is we were guaranteed by the Beijing Olympic Committee that we would be provided equipment. Well, at the beginning, we didn't have anything. It was just basically doing different things, air squats, push-ups, those type of things. And then slowly but surely, we were allowed deliveries once a day from the U.S. Olympic Committee and from Bobsled and Skeleton Federation. But basically, they were kind of limited in what all they could bring in. So every day it'd be like a little bit delivery of different equipment. And then as we got more and more equipment, my husband would improve and change the workouts as necessary.
It's so fascinating. It's almost like it's a team effort while you're in isolation to make sure that you have the resources that you need to do the weightlifting and the workouts, the nutrition stuff. It's really fascinating. I know, Elana, that a mantra of yours is that you always look to find perspective in every situation when things aren't necessarily going the way that maybe you wanted them to. How hard was it, the mental side of all this, right? I mean, there was the physical piece of staying healthy and staying conditioned, but how hard was the mental piece in isolation, knowing that you have this big competition coming up?
I think the biggest thing is that my husband is one of the most positive people in the world. And so just having him every day saying, we're going to get out of here. And it's not just a matter of when we get out, it's how we get out and what kind of shape we get it out in. And, just using every opportunity to tell me that we got to keep preparing. We got to look forward. We got to do what we can to focus. And I think mentally I had a lot of things to kind of distract me. First was pumping for my son, making sure he had the breast milk he needed. The second was doing my workouts. And the third, I had a lot of people internationally reach out to me. One particular athlete, Benny Meyer, he's actually an Austrian athlete. He was actually sending me notes and film from the track to make sure I could stay engaged because there were people training at that time. Everybody was training and getting runs on the track. And so he was actually sending me video and keeping me engaged, as well as other people internationally just kept checking on me, which really just shows you what kind of community bobsled is. Like, for people who I'm competing with to reach out to me to see how I'm doing, to check on me, it was really, really uplifting in that sense.
That is super cool. I mean, to think that people who are in competition are really kind of uniting as one community to help someone out in a challenging time. What do you think it is about the bobsled community that creates an environment like that?
Well, I think part of it is because we're a team sport. COVID kind of hit each team throughout the year at some point. So most of the athletes had been through that isolation situation and still trying to prepare and race. Unfortunately for them, at some point they got it during the season where they were at least trying to qualify. I don't know what's worse is like having that stress of just trying to qualify or doing it at the Olympics, getting COVID at the Olympics. So they all kind of felt what I was going through because they had been through it. And the other thing is, bobsled is a very hardworking sport. We're on the road 6 months out of the year. Even if you're a European, where most of our tracks are, you're away from your friends, you're away from your family. It's really like a blue collar sport. Like, we're our own sled mechanics. It's tough. It's dangerous. It's all these types of things. So you really become a family over the common struggle, I guess.
It's so interesting. Elana, we talked before we got on here that shortly before the Olympics, I interviewed Sylvia Hoffman, who is one of your teammates. You guys medaled together. And she said the same thing. She said, obviously, she's much newer to bobsled than you are, but she described it the same way. Blue collar sport. She said, we're our mechanics. We ship the sled. We work on the sled. We take ownership of the sled. We push it to the starting line. We're responsible for everything. And that's just, part of the culture that, that she really appreciates. You get out of isolation in Beijing, you go on to win a silver, you win a bronze, 5 medals in your career. You are the oldest woman to medal for the U.S. at a Winter Olympics in any sport. I want to know, Elana, I know you chuckled there a little bit when I said the oldest woman to medal for the U.S. in the Winter Olympics at any sport, but that's a heck of an honor. What has been the key to the longevity for you as you think about your career?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of different keys. Number one has been who I surround myself with. the people in my corner. And, a lot of times I don't have control. Who's the head coach? Who's the assistant coach? Like, I don't have control over those things, but who's my strength and conditioning coach? Who's my nutritionist? Who's my sports psych? And of course, my husband, I got to choose him. So those people who are in my corner have really been the key to my longevity, because they're some of the most positive people in my life. And whenever you have that kind of positivity around you, it's hard not to be successful. And, we're all inevitably going to have those days where we have doubts. And it's really important to have those kind of people who pick you up and will just guide you and help you through those tough times. So the second thing that I really feel has been a key to my success has been really being a student of the game. Bobsled is not a sport where you feel like you ever have it nailed down, where you ever feel like everything is just 100% perfect. There's always ways to be getting better and improving. And I've worked my entire career to find those hundredths of a second everywhere I possibly can, and being willing to constantly learn and not being content. And, I've been one of the fastest pushing drivers in the world, or pushing athletes in the world, for most of my career, and if not all of my career. And to not be satisfied with that, to be continually pushing the envelope and seeing how I can get faster and stronger, I think has really been one of the keys to my success, is because you have to keep learning, because, the game is always evolving, it's changing, and you have to continue to change with it.
So I want to break that down a little bit, Elana. So like, how do you do that? Like, what are some of the things that you do to kind of, as you say, be a student of the game, stay current? I mean, obviously you have to be eager to learn, but what are some of the things that you're doing?
I think one of the biggest things is I constantly look at video and film of pushing, of driving, and just constantly studying what the best in the world are doing, what everyone else is doing, what I'm doing, and constantly finding ways to critique my own technique and critique what I'm doing. And I think you have to be, because there's always ways to be faster. And also from an equipment side, equipment is huge in our sport. I'm constantly trying to find ways to make my equipment faster. There's limitations on every sled and what you can do, but every time I'm in the sled, I'm trying to do everything I can to go as fast as possible.
What about the piece on surrounding yourself with people that are kind of in your corner? I mean, all of us end up in circumstances where we can't control all of the people that are around us, right? Like you said, there's some people that you can't control. There are some people that you can. How do you go about kind of maybe tuning out like negative people, if there are, in your orbit, and really kind of focusing in on the people who are adding positivity?
Yeah, I think that's one of the toughest things about being an athlete, or being anybody, actually, is you're always going to have those negative people. Just recognizing, number one, that usually when people are that negative, or have that kind of negative energy, it's got nothing to do with you. It's something that's wrong with them, something that's wrong with their lives. Especially in the sporting context, I feel like a lot of people who bring that negative energy around you are upset because they couldn't accomplish what you accomplish, or upset because they're not able to not necessarily accomplish what you accomplished, but they haven't reached all of their goals, whatever they were or whatever they may be. So they bring negative energy around you. And I think the biggest thing is to just, those positive people that you surround yourself with, is to lean on them whenever those times happen. And also recognize that, it doesn't matter what people say. It's all about what you do and how you perform. And the only things that you can control are what goes on inside your head.
Elana, I mentioned that I had talked to Sylvia Hoffman before the Olympics, and obviously her story, I mean, a pretty fast turnaround from the time that she got into a bobsled for the first time in 2018 to competing in the Olympics in 2022. I'm curious, how did you discover the sport of bobsledding for the first time? What led you to the sport?
Yeah, so I grew up playing softball, but all with the intention of making an Olympic team. So I played softball, basketball, soccer, track, you name it, I played it. And then eventually went on to play collegiately at the George Washington University softball, and then played professionally as well. And then finally had an Olympic tryout and was super excited for Olympic tryout. But unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess in some regards, had the worst tryout in the history of tryouts. Like, this was such a bad tryout. So I knew I wasn't going to make the Olympic softball team. They took softball out of the game. So I was like, well, if I want to be an Olympian, I need a new sport. What can I do? And it was actually my parents who saw bobsled on TV and said, hey, why don't you give this a try? I was like, sure, why not? I Googled it, emailed the coach, and got invited to a tryout.
You Google it, you email the coach and get invited to a tryout. I mean, that's like the biggest lesson here, right? It's like, if you've got something, an email doesn't cost you anything. That's pretty neat. I mean, you just lob a note into the coach and say, hey, I think I want to try a hand at this.
Yep, that was pretty much it. And bobsled is one of those sports that are always recruiting, always looking for fast, strong, powerful athletes. And then we just teach you how to bobsled, and that's exactly what happened to me. They invited me up to Lake Placid. I did some testing. My testing went well, and they're like, "Okay, we're going to teach you how to push a bobsled." And basically, start there. You start on like a dry land push track, which is just a rail system. And then for me, it was pretty quickly from that rail system. Before I even had figured out the technique, really, that we were on ice, and then it escalated from there, pretty quickly. I was racing in my first World Cup. And that was in 2007, in the fall of 2007.
Fall of 2007. So how hard was it to learn like the art of bobsled? I mean, obviously you come in a tremendous athlete, strong, fast, but like it came together pretty quickly.
I was able to win my first Olympic medal in 3 years. So as a brakeman in the back of the sled, but it's not easy at all to learn that technique. It took me all 3 years to really get to a point where I felt like I could compete at the highest level. Now, initially, just based off of athleticism, I was competing at a pretty good level. I think we had gotten fifth at my first World Cup, so I was at a good level there, and that was with knowing nothing. But I didn't have good technique. I wasn't nearly as strong as fast as I would become. Like it was a lot to learn. And it was a lot of frustrating days, but just slowly but surely I started to figure it out and eventually, was fortunate enough to make an Olympic team.
I mean, it says something about the sport and the U.S. program for bobsledding that, the sport is able to take folks who haven't competed in bobsledding and in a relatively short time, like you and like Sylvia's story, and I'm sure there are others. I mean, have you at an elite level in a very, very short period of time? I mean, obviously, you've got an immense talent. What do you think it is about the U.S. Olympic bobsled program that has kind of had so much success in that regard?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that's how everybody in the world operates. So it's nothing new. Athletes usually come in after their collegiate system or after they've already competed in another sport from around the world. So it's not a new idea for the US to bring in athletes from track and field or rugby or anything like that. Like that's basically how it works. Now that we have bobsled in the Youth Olympics, you're going to start to see younger and younger athletes or athletes grow up doing it. But for the most part, it's a pretty standard model. Like most people are like rookies around the age of 20, 21. So it's pretty common there. So I don't know that the U.S. does anything specific. We could be doing a lot more, I'll say that, to try and get the best athletes we can. But the biggest thing we have the advantage of the U.S. versus some other countries is we've got a large number of athletes and a large number of athletes, especially female athletes, where there's not a lot of professional leagues. So when you graduate from college, if you play a collegiate sport, there's nowhere for you to go. There's some leagues here and there, and there's more sprouting up, but there's not a lot of opportunity. So as far as female athletes, bobsled's a great opportunity versus the nothingness of professional leagues for you.
What role have you played in terms of kind of mentoring and helping to develop some of those younger athletes who are inexperienced as they kind of find the sport? Is that something that you've been a part of?
I've been absolutely huge in recruiting athletes. I can't even name the amount of athletes I've recruited, but I've recruited a lot for both bobsled and skeleton throughout my tenure, just trying to introduce people to the sport and get them in the door and things like that. And the other thing is just even the younger drivers, just trying to help them along. Like I know this year, even I donated some of my equipment that I was getting rid of to the younger drivers and just trying to help them along because it's very important to me this program stays successful for a long time, well after I'm gone. And let's face it, I've got a lot less bobsled in front of me than I do behind me. So my time is drawing to a close. But it's important to me that the program stays strong, and the only way we're going to do that is transfer of knowledge.
I know one of the things that you say quite a bit, Elana, is that you believe good things happen when you are kind to others. And I kind of hear that story that you told about the Austrian bobsledder who kind of picked you up, and you talked about, giving some equipment to some younger and up and coming bobsledders. I mean, has kind of this kindness and this giving kind of disposition that you have always been something that's been a part of you?
Yeah, it's always been something that has been a part of how I operate because especially within the sport of bobsled, I don't really feel like I'm racing the other competitors. Yes, on the stat sheet I am, but at the end of the day, I'm racing the clock. So I've got no reason to have ill will in anybody I'm competing against. As a matter of fact, it usually serves me better if the entire field is stronger. So I want everybody to perform to the best of their ability. I just want to beat them at their best. And so I don't really feel like being kind, or I don't think there's ever a reason not to be kind, especially in a competition sense, because their success has nothing to do with mine, in the sense that they could have the best runs of their lives. If mine are better, I'm still going to win. They've got to have the best runs of their lives, but hopefully I'm having the best runs of my lives. And I believe when I do, I could beat anybody in the world.
Where does that confidence come from? I mean, some people, no matter how talented they are at something, they don't have that gumption that they can beat anybody in the world if they focus on something. How do you kind of manifest that?
I think part of it is some of the coaches I've had work with me, but another part is just experience. Like as you go through the sport, you have your ups and downs, and I think for me, overcoming a lot of the downs is giving me more confidence. You'll see some people in their career, and they don't have to overcome much. They might lose a race here and there, or they might not perform as well as they want. But as far as like no major injuries, no anything like that. But I think there's a certain amount of confidence you build when you have an adverse event and you overcome it and win a medal anyways. There's a certain amount of confidence that shows you like, yes, you're stronger than you think. And yes, mentally you're stronger than you think, and you can overcome a lot. So I think that's the biggest thing, is having that perspective of, you're not always going to have the perfect race. You're not always going to win everything, but you have the potential to, just based off of what you've overcome.
How do you like take a race and like find the positives, right? Like maybe like you said there, like everything doesn't go well, but like how do you go about kind of picking out those positive things to focus on?
Well, first in bobsled, there's at least 15 curves, 14, 15, sometimes even 20, 25 curves on every track. So if you can't find a positive in one of those curves, something went really, really bad. So usually you can find...
For me, I would just be excited to make it down there in one piece. I mean, that would be a success for me.
And at the beginning of your bobsled career, that is, that's your positive, is you made it down another track, or you qualified for the race, or these types of things. So I think that's the biggest thing, is there's always some positives to be taken away from a race. And the biggest positive taken away from any race is that it's a learning opportunity, and I think that was my biggest approach this year. And that was my biggest approach this quad, is like all using every single race for a learning opportunity leading into the Olympics, and not getting hung up. I didn't win as many two-man medals as I would have liked this year, but it wasn't really about that. It was about preparing for the Olympics. And so just taking every race as a learning opportunity. I mean, if you look at it like that, you'll always find something positive about it.
You mentioned the video before, and obviously doing a lot of video work. How are you, like, do you have a system to kind of track your progress and improvements? Like, do you have a notebook? Like, what's the system, or is it kind of all up here?
A little of both. So every time we're at a track, it changes. Even the curves are the same from year to year. Every track in the world is different, but every day is actually different. So some includes taking notes, some includes just going over the video with coaches, but a lot of it is what I remember, because I'm a driver who goes really off my feel. And the way the ice feels from day to day changes based off of the weather conditions, based off how they prep the ice and things like that. So a lot of it is what is going on in my head to track my progress, and what is my feeling in the sled. Like, I know when I feel really good in sled, I'm going to drive well. That's a no-brainer for me. But when I'm not feeling great in my sled, I know I'm going to struggle.
What tells you that you're feeling good in the sled? Like, how quickly do you know that you're feeling good in the sled? Like, how long does it take?
Oh, I know within the first couple curves. When I'm feeling good in the sled is reacting with me. I really feel like the sled is moving as a piece of me. When I'm not moving well with the sled, it kind of feels like you're dancing offbeat, so to speak. You're a bad dancer, basically. That's how it feels. It just feels like you're fighting the sled the entire way down the track. You might make it down, you might even be fast, but it's not as smooth as you would like it to be.
Elana, I know, giving back and the community is such a passion of yours. You've been the past president of the Women's Sports Foundation, involved in so many great causes. You mentioned earlier that, you've got more sledding kind of behind you than you probably do ahead of you. I'm just curious, like, have you thought about what's next for you once the bobsled career eventually comes to an end?
Yeah, I've thought about a lot of different things. I think one of the biggest things is I wanted to be the CEO of the USOPC. I don't know how much that's changed, but I also know my son was born with Down syndrome. And so that community is very special to me. So I wanted to continue to do advocacy work with them and fight for more inclusion and things like that for the disability community. So Where this all leads, I'm not quite sure, but I'm looking forward to finding out someday.
I know, Elana, the fact that you had to take some time off when you had your son after, in between before the Beijing Olympics was something that, caught a lot of people's attention. And I think really empowered a lot of people, who saw, you take that pause and then still come back in such a strong fashion. I mean, is that something that at the time you were thinking about that, hey, I'm setting an example here for people. I'm someone who's inspiring people, or were you just kind of, hey, this is what I got to do?
It was definitely one of those things where I worked every day to try and inspire my son, show my own son that it was possible for his mommy to go after his dreams. But at the end of the day, it was really one of those conversations that me and my husband talked to each other and decided, it's worth it giving it an effort. How it turned out, we weren't quite sure. He was, of course, said the whole time we were going to go to Beijing and win 2 medals. I was less optimistic, less certain, but he said the whole time we were going to do it, and lo and behold, we did it. But at the end of the day, it was really about the journey and just trying and see what happened, seeing if it was possible at the end of the day.
Your journey has been absolutely fantastic, Elana, and you're going to get to talk about it at the George Washington University commencement stage. You're giving the commencement speech in not too long of a time here. As you think about that, and I don't want you to give anything away that's coming in the commencement speech, but what do you think that experience is going to be like?
GW has one of the most unique graduations in the world because we graduate on the National Mall. So I'll be right behind the national monuments and things like that. And just being on the National Mall and being able to speak on behalf of graduating classes. I say classes because they haven't had a big ceremony since COVID. It's going to be a pretty awesome experience. And to share that moment with so many people graduating and having one of the best moments of their lives, it's really an honor to be able to do that. I'm really looking forward to it.
Elana, I am just so impressed with your story. And like I've said, I've had the good fortune of getting to talk to a lot of Olympians and pro athletes and other elite performers in different crafts. And when I saw that video of you lifting that barbell in that small space in that hotel in Beijing, I didn't care if you won any medals. I was impressed. But to come out of there and win a bronze and a silver with all of that stacked up against you, I mean, what an absolutely fantastic way to represent your country, represent yourself, your family, and the entire bobsled community. I've had so much fun learning from you here, Elana. I appreciate you spending a few minutes with me this week.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And just as a little background, I've pulled my fair share of tarps as a softball player at GW, a lot of tarp duty, a lot of icy tarp duty, which is a privilege few people get to experience. So I really appreciate you having me.
Well, I know anybody who's got a little bit of experience in baseball or softball knows how hard it is to pull that tarp. But regardless, you are a tarp puller, and you're leading by example every single day, Elana. It's been so much fun unpacking your story a little bit, and I know the best is yet to come.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining me this week. Be sure to subscribe in your favorite podcast app so you can catch all of our upcoming episodes. And if you are like me and want a world full of tarp pullers, then leave a review to help others find us. You can also follow me on Instagram at AndrewMoses123 and sign up for my monthly email newsletter at everybodypullsthetarp.com/newsletter. I'll share tips and insights to help you achieve maximum success and happiness. Today is a great day to pull the tarp. I am rooting for you. See you next time.